Oh, you know what? We should talk about Lost.
Oh, welcome to the podcast, brother.
We are talking about season 1, episode 3 of Lost, Tabula Rasa. It first aired on October 6th, 2004. Technically, it's the third episode, although this is the first episode that was made after the show got picked up from the pilot. It is a Kate-centric episode. Derek, what did you think of Tabula Rasa?
I liked it. Which this is the first time in my life that I have ever watched this episode at least a week after the last one.
Yeah.
What a dramatic difference in production and acting and lines that just hit, like the jokes. I was like actively laughing. There were some things that just didn't hit as well in the pilot. I mean, Sawyer, he's starting to just toss out nicknames.
Transmission Abdul picked up on his little radio for how long was it, Freckles? The French chick that said,
Al Jazeera, he'll protect
Al Jazeera's a network.
You can tell that A, they're all annoyed, and B, they know exactly who he's talking about, which is what annoys them even more. Long story short is, I liked it. How did you feel about it?
I liked it, and I think this was also the first time that I watched it without having immediately watched the preceding one. And so it didn't bother me as much when they would recap things where it's sort of like, yeah, we just saw the pilot get killed, or yeah, we just listened to that transmission. And it was like, okay, thank you for bringing me up to speed on that. But I agree, things are a lot crisper. It doesn't feel like they got some good actors to come in and guess who these characters were. It feels like they have a more defined idea of who these characters are. I did not remember that we got Crazy Eyes Jack so soon in this show. We got Crazy Eyes Jack in this. But it's incredible to me watching this now and seeing how quickly they dialed certain things in. Like Hurley being the audience surrogate. Him asking all of the questions that the audience is asking.
What do you think she did? Was it a dinosaur?
he's not gonna die.
He's yellow, man.
120 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah, but she's got that gun. So how do you know it wasn't a dinosaur?
He's great, and I really enjoyed that. And the fact that Sawyer and Jack already dislike each other. I mean, Sawyer dislikes everybody, but the fact that he's already crackling back and forth with Jack, it's like that scene with him in the fuselage where he says,
Wow.
yeah, you are. So we start off with people going through their luggage. It's clear that the beach people, which I've heard them referred to as beach bunnies, and I've also heard Hughes and Damon Lindelof refer to them as the socks. I always assumed that it was because they were basically sock puppets that didn't really matter, and they would kill them off whenever they felt it was convenient. But we see the socks. They're going through their luggage. It's clear they know that they're going to be here for a little bit longer, and this is when Jack sees Kate's mugshot. He sees a picture of her, looking great, by the way.
She looks pretty hardcore.
We see Saeed with the group coming back. The night falls, and Saeed uses the burning stick the exact same way that Jack used the leaf in the pilot, but he does it in a way that makes a lot more sense, that you would just use a stick with fire on it. You wouldn't take the time.
So it's the same thought.
And it seems that from what Hurley says later, they also know that the pilot was eaten by this monster, which I think we both settled on is some sort of a plot hole, because they didn't tell people about that. And this is my first big asterisk, is they all decide to lie to the group about the transmission. And this is where we come to the crux of this show, which is all of our main characters have problems with trust and trusting people, and they liars. They are big lying liars.
I hear you on that. This is one of the times, though, where, like, Saeed gets my gold star this episode as de facto leader.
Yeah.
What I really liked was that he starts with, we're going to lie. But he then explains it in a way where I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
He's not wrong, but it does set a precedent for the show, which is this core group of people are the main characters who tell each other things, but don't tell the socks anything. But you are right. Saeed would have been a better leader than Jack when he's telling people we need to start rationing food and electronics, and we can capture water from the rain. And I'm watching this, and, you know, Jack is taking care of the marshal. I'm watching this and thinking, yeah, Saeed has military training. He understands people a lot better than Jack does. Why isn't Saeed our main focus here? Why isn't he our main character?
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to remember the political climate, but I'm sure that has something to do with it. You know, a Middle Eastern man in a plane crash 3 years after 9/11.
True.
That was the other note I wrote about Saeed, was when he tells the people, we need a group to gather computer chips. Yeah, giving people stuff to do so they don't lose their minds or panic and still feel useful. Yeah, great leadership.
So then we get to Hurley finds out that Kate is a criminal. He also sees her mugshot. All of his reactions in this episode are fantastic. I love Hurley. And it's funny, too, because I enjoyed him in the pilot, but this is the episode watching him where I remembered, oh, he's a big old teddy bear. He is honest, and he is good, and he is scared of the things I would be scared of, 100%.
I love his exchange with Kate.
Just getting progressively more flustered.
And then, like, I don't know if they did this intentionally, but, like, reversal of, like, a misogynist who maybe would check out Kate's butt, but instead Hurley just looks straight at the gun and is like, oh, okay, I'm going. Like, continue.
We got our flashback. Kate, calling herself Annie, starts working on an Australian farm with Ray Mullen, who has a hell of a mortgage. We get Kate telling Jack about the transmission because they got a little special thing, which is very clear already. And Hurley is asking very good questions of Jack about, like, hey, did you tell her that you saw her mugshot? And he's like, no, I'm not going to talk about that. And Hurley's like, why would you do that?
She looks pretty hardcore.
Sawyer immediately starts looting for food, smokes, and a couple Playboys. Charlie finds a wheelchair. Wonder if that's going to come into play. Jin tells Sun to wash up, but he says that he loves her, which feels like a studio note to me. So after that, it rains. Kate has trust issues. She stayed on the farm for 3 months, and Ray Mullen says, everyone deserves a fresh start. And I think that will be a theme that will come up later, not only in this episode, but also in this show. And my first question of the episode is, do we ever learn why the marshal hates Kate enough to choke her? Because I remember he shows up in several of her flashbacks, but I don't remember that she ever does anything that's so wildly dangerous that he would be like, I must kill you as with my dying breath.
This is the thing. He has such a hard-on for hating her.
Yes.
And did you get the impression that when he says to Jack,
She got to you too.
are we going to find out that Kate and the marshal had a thing? Like,
it does feel that way. I always expected it to go that way. And from what I remember, that's never the case. Like, we just learn in subsequent flashbacks that he just taunts her with her wanting to be normal and getting, like, her boyfriend killed or whatever. Yeah, it's weird. And I remember, I think you talked about this in some of our previous episodes, that Kate's initial setup as this criminal doesn't really pan out. It just kind of softens more and more over the course of the series, where we are led to believe that she's much more dangerous and much more of like a badass than she really ends up being. She really just ends up being a person who's constantly, in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that sucks, because one of the things I like about this is that we do have this Kate that you can tell she's with her eyes that she's sizing up the situation. She's trying to figure out, is she going to need to, who is she going to side with? Does she need to run? What is she going to have to do? And she's colder. She's a lot colder to Sawyer, and she's even a lot colder to Jack. She's got that frosty edge to her. This is somebody who's been alone for a long time, and she does have trust issues because it's just her relying on herself.
Yeah, she is my most disappointing character, at least in memory. I guess we'll see how it pans out. But I think that's part of my problem, is that I want her to be dangerous.
Yeah.
This episode gives us no reason to believe that Kate warrants a $23,000 ransom. And the marshal just comes across as a dick.
Yes.
It's even like
absolutely.
the driving up and doing the finger gun of, I got you. What's your plan, guys?
Why is the marshal driving like an asshole? Like, we've already established that Ray has turned her in. He just needs to stop the car and let the marshal take her away. The marshal doesn't need to be driving all across the road. He's just a dick. That little finger gun, to do that thing, because he's driving on the right side, he has to like switch his hands to make that symbol. That's such a I like the actor. I think he plays this character really well. But that character is such a you don't like him. You don't like him at all.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it, is that they want you to want him dead, not just because he's dying. Because if anyone deserves to die on this island, it's definitely this guy.
My next note that I have here is, we already got Crazy Eyes Jack when he says, I am not a murderer. And it's in the rain, and the rain's coming down at him, and his eyes they get wide, and they also get squinty at the same time. And my favorite Jack is Crazy Eyes Jack. The reward is $23,000, as you said. We had the numbers the last episode, but this is the first time I picked up that the numbers show up in a new context. And that is something that will happen throughout the series, is that numbers from the sequence 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42 will continuously show up in these characters' lives. There's a weird use of slow motion in this episode. There's like 2 or 3 shots where there was Jack looking at Kate, there was Kate looking at Jack, and I think Kate looking at the Marshal. Where it's weird. It's a weird style choice that I don't recall being in the rest of the show. We have Walt telling his dad that Mr. Locke said a miracle happened. We have Michael telling Walt that he'll get his dog back in the, and I quote,
haunted damn jungle.
Which is how I will refer to the jungle from now on. We get Michael being chased by, I believe it's a boar. We don't find out what it is in this episode. So it could have been another polar bear. Could have been anything really. Where he finds Sun washing herself. I remember thinking this scene was really funny the first time I saw it. And I didn't think it was funny this time, where he just hands her back her clothes and just says, like, I didn't see anything. It just felt sad. I think that's probably just me, like, in my thoughts about Michael maybe coloring the scene. I don't know. What did you think?
I want to give Michael a little bit of credit this episode. Or maybe it's being a dad. I'll find your dog. It's the rain stops. And then the rain stops like, yeah, all right.
That was definitely the island fucking with, where I think I'm pretty sold on that idea.
There have been plenty of times where it's like, well, I'll do the thing, and then realizing, like, what am I thinking? I'm not a dog finder. Like, what are you expecting me to do? Yeah, he just like walks out there and into the haunted damn jungle, and it's like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know how to find a dog. If it didn't come, I have no idea how to find, like, because I've certainly done that where, like, the cat, I'll just like walk outside and be like, you out there? And, well, I've done all I can. Like,
yeah, it's like that's all I can do.
Yeah, it was a much more human dad moment than certainly in the pilot. So I liked it. Yeah, same thing with the son, and I give it a little bit of forgiveness because I did like the him walking away, and to even a degree I can forgive him grabbing a shirt and passing it to her. I did have to remind myself he doesn't know that Son speaks English. Like, and he thinks there's this person who he's now running through the jungle, and he comes out all sweaty and is like, like, I have a little bit of forgiveness for Michael's awkwardness. It's definitely a different shade of Michael than I think that we've seen. And then the other piece of me is like, plot wise, you're trying to find pairings or like giving a connection between characters. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like in a similar scenario, I certainly wouldn't pick up their shirt.
He came to her. It's not, she has under no obligation to put clothes on herself. He ran out of the haunted damn jungle to get to her. That's the part that I when I saw that, I was like, what are you doing? This is not, you don't own this part of this, she doesn't have to. You go away. You get out of here.
Yeah, so I don't know what purpose this serves.
I think it's to set up that, there's something between Michael and Son, like he feels some sort of way towards her, but that we know that ultimately goes nowhere. Next we go to Locke carving a dog whistle, and Charlie trying to cozy up to Locke, which was he talks about him using a flute in a song, which was silly, and I liked it. We have Saeed telling Jack that rumor is you can't save the Marshal's life. And I'm like, damn, Saeed, that's pretty cold. Also kind of catty. We have Marshall telling Jack not to trust Kate, no matter how she makes you feel. We've got the flashback of the Marshal driving like an asshole. We have Kate wanting to make sure that Ray Mullen gets his 23 grand. And we have Sawyer shooting the Marshal, but fucking it up. I remember that was a big surprise for me the first time I saw the show. I remember you see Kate leaving, and you see Jack, like, he's like, oh, what did you do? And she's like, I didn't do anything. And then you hear that the loudest gunshot in the world. It was super loud on my TV. And you've got Sawyer coming out, swinging his big dick, just being like, I was going to do what you couldn't. And then the sound of the Marshal choking on his own blood is, that's horrible. That's so horrible. I remember that moment as vividly as anything when I first watched the show is first the realization that Sawyer shot this guy and be like, whoa, this guy's for real. And then knowing that the show went there where it's like, nope, you fucked that up. This is an even more horrible way to die. You're like, oh my God. And Jack looking at this guy and telling Sawyer's,
You missed.
and at first I thought that was a clever bit of screenwriting from the writers, just being like, it's like, just because you shoot someone in the chest doesn't mean that, they die. Although I have read, and I haven't fact checked this, but I have read that Carlton Cuse said that they actually thought that in reality the likelihood of Sawyer missing his heart was low, and that's why they decided to give him glasses later on. But I would just chalk it up to, if you're somebody who doesn't shoot people regularly, you think you know where the heart is. Like, I think I know where the heart is, but I don't know. Just because you get shot does not mean you die. I believe it's implied, but never actually said that Jack does choke him to death, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a bigger question I have, because, pretty sure Jack just killed somebody.
Yeah, I think that's why he's like staring off into the ocean at the end of the episode. It's not so much that that the man died, it's that Jack had to kill him, which is, not just against his Hippocratic oath, but also, he didn't want to have to kill this guy. That was something he was very clearly against. And the sound editing top notch for the episode, because you've got the gunshot, you've got the choking, and then you have what sounds like the asphyxiating as Jack does the merciful thing and ends this guy's life. So we get Locke finding Walt's dog and lets Michael be the one to bring it to him, which is an incredibly sweet moment. We have maybe the most important conversation in this early part of the show, where Jack talks to Kate and says he doesn't want to know what she did. Doesn't matter who they were before the crash. And he says, 3 days ago, we all died. And I submit to you once more the purgatory theory that this was always meant to be them dealing with the sins of their past. I don't know what that says about the Marshal, though. So that kind of tears a hole in kind of perforates the lung of that theory. Maybe he just sucked.
Well, I mean, he definitely just sucked. But his final conversation with Kate, I did think that was, as you mentioned before, like, to give that actor some credit, because again, it's just the character that I hate. I actually really like that scene. I didn't remember enjoying that scene the first time I saw it, but I really enjoyed it this time around when the Marshal talks to Kate about how he's like,
I'm gonna die, right? But you're gonna do it.
Because they give us at least enough of their backstory that it's like, this guy hates her, he loves watching her suffer, probably imagines that, like, if the tables were returned, she would kill him. And I mean, with his, like, one of his dying breaths tried to choke her to death.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, it really did feel like a sworn enemy looking into the eyes of, like, his greatest foe. And, like, he does play it as, like, I want you to.
Yeah, no, you're right. That it is that sort of acceptance. And even Sawyer says,
But he wanted it. Hell, he asked me.
You make a good point. And again, I know obviously Jack means it in a metaphorical sense, but I do still very much hold to the theory that the original idea was that they're in purgatory and they're balancing the scales, basically. They're
100%.
making peace.
I mean, I almost thought we should start this episode with that Google chatbot AI that I sent you, where I was like, explain the ending of Lost, and they were like, but it was like a purgatory within a purgatory. Oh. Got it. No, I mean, it was 100% meant to be purgatory. And I think that it's still possible. I mean, the part that I know gets that then when more people arrive on the island who know that you can also get off it gets a little.
Yeah, it doesn't. It falls apart in later seasons. But I still every time something like that comes up, I'm like,
Yeah, and I would have been a bit, well, whatever. Anyway, point is, just in terms of like a show or a editing thing, because as you mentioned, like, the slow-mos were weird. Again, like, they're like trying to find their footing in that conversation between Kate and the Marshal, because this is the first episode after the pilot. He's like, what was that favor you wanted? She's like, what? Before the plane crash. And then they show us the previous episode. And it's like, yeah, I mean, eagle-eyed viewer would have already known, like, oh, we're finally going to find out what the favor was. Like, they didn't need to show us that clip. But I think that's funny that it's like you can see the, how, like, juvenile the show, or not juvenile, but, like, how young the show is. Yeah. It's like, oh, we should show them the thing so that they remember. It's like, they remember. We remember. Like,
I mean, yeah. But any excuse to cut back to that shot of the back of the plane just ripping off. Great Great shot. So we end the episode with the first Hurley song montage, which will become a regular thing in the show up until Hurley's music player dies, which I remember that being a heartbreaking episode. I originally thought this was a Jack Johnson song. It's a song by Joe Purdy called Wash Away. And I really liked this montage a lot. I liked Saeed tosses Sawyer what looks like an apple. And I always thought that this was Saeed sort of sympathizing with Sawyer, maybe as a former soldier, maybe as somebody who's, had to take a life before, maybe just to show that, they're all on this island together and, they can't hate each other 100% of the time. I liked that. I liked seeing him tossing him the fruit. Charlie writes late on his hand because he's making nice with Claire. Michael brings Walt his dog. And then we end on a very sinister shot of John Locke. Who is he? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? What's this guy's deal? Is he evil? It's that beautiful montage ending with that slow turnaround. The song like fades out and it gets a little dark and you just see him looking at the family like, what is he going to do?
Yeah.
Questions, thoughts, what do you feel?
Yeah, I do love and miss the Hurley slow-mo music montages. I think those are so precious.
Yeah.
Just because, like you said too, it's like it's not just that like they picked the perfect music for it, but also that like it really does serve as like this nice little bookend on a lot of these episodes. And don't get me wrong, and when it eventually ends, I know it's like a gut punch. Because then I think you mentioned that's the score, right? That when it does transition to Locke, that Michael Giacchino or something like.
Giacchino, I think.
Right.
It's Michael Giacchino? Yeah.
Whatever that transition is where it's like, this is creepy. You didn't know that the next episode was a Locke episode. I feel like that's one of the first times that they really do allude like he's next.
Yeah.
We're going to get his episode. What is Tabula Rasa?
Tabula Rasa means a clean slate, I believe. I'm going to look this up. It's Latin for blank slate. So it's basically they've crashed on this island. As Jack says, there is no before. We've all got a fresh start. And, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. The flashbacks imply that we're still hanging on to our baggage, to our former lives.
So, and this is where, because I am even still a bit of a Jack stan, I will say too, I gotta give Matthew Fox some credit for this stuff too. That line that you did earlier, when the way he says
You miss.
Oh, it comes with all of the weight of Sawyer having been like teasing Jack, because it does seem like the reason why he like picks out all of these nicknames and stuff. He's like, oh, I'm in the wild. I'm a dad. This is my environment. I'm fine. I'm great. You guys are the ones with the problem, little people. And then so for Sawyer to then like have a 1-8, like it also just feels like in that one line of it has all that weight of like you're wrong. Everything that like it's
weight.
I love
word for that. He does the way that Matthew Fox delivers some lines is you feel so much tension inside of him, and it's oh god, and then it comes out in the eyes,
So that's one of the things too I really liked is when Kate does tell him about the transmission, and he's like, is that all? And he's in such a way where it's like he doesn't care. He's expecting her to tell him as though she would somehow know.
I forgot to write that down. That he's like an angry boyfriend or something. He's sort of like, it's like, oh yeah, okay, sure, fine, transmission, yeah, 16 years, stuck on this island forever. Somebody got killed, whatever. Why did you lie to me?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that I love. That like you get a clear sense of his priorities, and even Saeed very much he's like an exceptional leader, and I feel like there's a version of the show where like. Follow that.
Yeah.
Let's say you just be the leader. Because I think it is because this kind of harkens back to the thing we talked about on the pilot, which was Jack probably like looking to get away from people. And to an extent, I feel like the marshal is his excuse to not be bothered. Like,
yeah.
No one from the camp is like talking to other than like those that seek him out. Like obviously Hurley makes a good nurse. Kate seeks him out. But yeah, he does not want to be with the group. He's like, oh, I've got a patient, so I'm gonna stick with that.
You're totally right. He's secluded himself. He's the only people he talks to is Sawyer briefly in the fuselage because he has to. Saeed comes up to him, to say like, rumor is you can't save him. And then aside from that, Hurley and Kate are the only he's talking to. Yeah, you're totally right.
I like that, and this leads me to this was my big question that I had because it like kind of captures the theme of the episode. I didn't know what to make of Jack's to Kate. My two interpretations of this is, one is Jack saying, because when Kate's like, I want to tell you, and he says, no, I don't want to know, is his way of basically saying like, hey, we're going to get rescued. And when we all go back to our own lives, we're all going to be strangers. So I don't want to hear it. It's his way of being like, I'm not going to get into this. I'm not going to commit. No one here is my problem.
That's so cynical. I love that.
But it's also like, it feels a little bit like it could be. But then the other one being like, is this him basically saying like, please, is it his way of empathizing, and that it's like, I did just kill someone. So let's forget that I did and move on. Like in both ways, I think of it as like very selfish, because he's given us no reason to think that he wouldn't be selfish at this point. I certainly don't feel like he's empathizing with Kate of like, hey, you must have had a good reason. It really, to me, seems like he's either saying like, hey, let's forget what you did, and more importantly, forget what I did. It's we're all going to be rescued, so why bother getting to know each other?
I don't think it's that. When I first saw the show, I was like, that is a very enlightened perspective to have. Jack has a very clear head about this. He's saying, we've all crashed on this island together, and we are all that we have. So it doesn't benefit us at all to dwell on whatever we did in the past. We need to help each other right now. We don't know how long we're going to be here. I think in light of everything that we learn about Jack, it's more Jack trying to be this guy and trying to say, we're going to let the past die. But he's not. We saw his real reaction when Kate didn't tell him that she was a criminal. We saw it in his face. We saw it in the way that he behaved to her afterwards, having been that guy, not proud to admit, like having been that guy, just be like, oh, okay, fine. Well, I'm just gonna give you the cold shoulder then. We're not gonna talk about this. I think Jack wants to. We have a blank slate. Let's use it. Let's not worry about this. But of course, that's not how it works out. Like, Jack is an alcoholic. Jack has severe daddy issues. Jack hates people, as you have expertly covered. And he wants to be the guy who says, we can start fresh, we can start new. And I think also it's, Jack does try sometimes. And I think this is him trying to make Kate feel better. Because I think Jack and Kate have a special bond, which forged, that day when they met on the beach, where he needed her and she sewed him up. And I think that's genuine. I want to believe that it's more than just, these are our romantic alpha pair. I want to believe that Jack thinks he and Kate can rely on each other. And what hurts him more than anything is when she doesn't tell him. It's not that she's not telling him about something bad that she did. It's that she's keeping something. And his mindset is like, we survived being chased by maybe a dinosaur. So we should be honest with each other. And again, that's presumptuous on Jack's part, a little bit of toxic masculinity. But I think the most positive take on it is that he wants them to confidants. He wants them to be able to trust each other. And for him, it is the best thing for him to say, to say, we're starting from here. This is where we start. Just to backtrack real quick, Hurley asking if it's a dinosaur seems like a perfectly valid question.
Oh, absolutely.
I still remember, I think it's in the Hurley episode where he goes like on a rant.
Maybe it's a pissed off giraffe. I don't know.
And that is my favorite thing. Like I was so ready for it to be a pissed off giraffe for the rest of the show.
Yeah, no, and again, I just want to echo, I think her and Charlie, they were both really like on point this episode for the joke. Because, before I go there, I'm going to stand by this. I think that Jack is pushing Kate away in that moment.
You think so?
She also, she gives him this expression too, because this is kind of what sealed it for me, is that like she doesn't nod or anything. She gives him this look of like worried. And it's partly why I think, and I'm a little bit jumping the gun, but I also think that even with the context of this episode, it is totally believable that Jack blames Kate for the fact that Jack just had to kill.
Yeah, that's true.
And it goes back to a Hurley shout out in this I absolutely moment when he's like, it's like, Kate's in there alone with him, and Jack's like, yeah. He's like, aren't you worried? And he's like, she's 120 pounds, she's sopping wet. And Hurley's like, well, she's got a gun. He's like, what? He knows that Kate had the gun. Even though she's walking out, she got Sawyer to shoot to go in and shoot the guy. So now he's in this crossroads of like, because Kate has this relationship with the guy, because she saw that this guy, who Jack doesn't like, is with, but that guy is incompetent because he missed the heart and didn't shoot him in the head. Jack has to kill a guy. Like, I think it's totally reasonable that Jack is sitting there on the beach looking at the ocean, and not only did she screw me up because I had to kill someone, but she also now screwed the guy up who I don't, because like he's now rocked. Like Sawyer at the end of that episode is genuinely like shaken. Like
he really is. Yeah, he really is.
And it's like, you could look at this as though like Kate just screwed up 3 people's lives. The Marshalls, Sawyer's, and Jack's.
Okay, you know what? You're starting to convince me. I think it'll depend on how they interact in the next episode. Because like they're like everything's cool, I think more my side. But oh man, you make a very convincing argument, and I what tangled webs we weave. So Kate is a terrible person, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. Like they spend the flashback trying to. She's actually good intentioned.
Yeah.
But they show you like she just screwed over 3 people. Like, and yeah, like that's a dangerous person. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the next episode, in the same way that like this Locke thing is super sinister. Yeah. And I believe, the next episode starts with him working in a box factory or a board game company. Like it's like, should I be afraid of this man?
Well, this is something. Yeah, we'll talk about this more next episode. But like, I was always confused as to whether Locke had always had the skills that he shows on the island, or if he just developed all those skills in preparation for the walkabout that he never went on. And really, more of a question for next time. But like, even like carving a whistle out of wood, like that's not. That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, well, and especially a dog with, because you got to know how to hit that octave, right? Or whatever that is.
Yeah, like, I mean, I feel like that's a little bit more advanced than just being in the Boy Scouts, but I don't know. I don't remember if we ever get like a satisfactory answer there.
I think like with the cannabis thing, what they're trying to show is that he did like bury himself in hobbies. Because I will say, like, as unrealistic as it is, like having worked on the boats, there were plenty of people who came to the boats who like their hobby was like welding weapons and swords. And there was a girl, she had a law or criminology degree. And I remember after she worked there 6 months, she carved a cleat like that you put the boat ropes around out of wood. She whittled it. How did you know how to do it? She's like, I just thought of the shape. And I was like, okay. Well, so I mean, but again, a dog whistle is also hyper specific. So I'm a little like, but yeah, so that was, and I don't know if we really talked at length about this, but I again, just want to point out that Sawyer, what a transformation for him to go from carefree, cracking wise, this is my environment, got some porno mags, to genuinely, he is rocked at the end of this episode.
Yeah. It was funny watching the pilot and being like, oh, I remember really liking Sawyer. This guy sucks. And then watching this episode and being like, oh, okay, we're playing different angles of this personality now. This is the guy I remember. He's charming, but he's a real person on the inside. He puts up a front of being an asshole, but he does feel things. Yeah, that was he was rocked.
Yeah, so I'll be curious to see him in the next episode too, to see how they carry that thread. The other thing I do want to mention, I did really like Charlie, because I had to say, because I know that like Sawyer was your favorite from the so it's interesting to hear you say like in the pilot, you're like, do I like this guy? Charlie, again, the jokes in the pilot just weren't. I was like, I remember really liking this character. This episode, Charlie.
Yeah.
The other thing that I loved, and again, I feel like this goes back a little bit to the whole Michael son, like they're trying to find what pairings they can do. And I love that Charlie, like that moment with Locke where he's like, I was in a band. I love that he cozies up to Locke, just starts talking. And same thing with Claire, where it's like, yeah, he doesn't. And I love that he does the line that like is in everything. It's like, oh, so you traveling? Is your husband on the plane, or just like, sorry. Oh, that was a note I had. I actually was like, I was way more uncomfortable with Boone holding a gun.
Yep.
Than Sawyer, Kate, or Sight. Like, yeah, someone that actually does not know what they're doing. Like, dude, get the gun out of his hands. Like,
I love how
this is not.
I had because it's been so long since I've seen Shannon and Boone, like how they're constantly bickering. When she's like, he doesn't believe in guns, he goes on marches, and he's like, while he's having an argument with the whole group, he's having a sub argument with Shannon. He's like, I don't go on marches. Like,
yeah, I absolutely, yeah. Again, that dynamic is so missed, as you mentioned, like later.
Yeah, I think the previous episode, but like I remember being very annoyed by them, and now almost being charmed by the fact that they're just this not couple that's just bickering with each other throughout the whole show. It's like all these important things are happening and they're just being snippy with each other. And when he gives the look she gives him in the montage when he gives her sunglasses, and his little smug smile after, he's like, yeah, I got your sunglasses. So like, who are you people? Yeah. What are you doing?
I absolutely adored the line where it's like, oh, I wish he would just die already. He's like, real humane, Shannon. It's like, because, yeah, it's like, and it's funny too, because like, I think like, again, just not having enough experience to have met someone like that. But yeah, like, I distinctly remember at one point being like in the office at work and someone complaining about how there was a car accident and that's why they were late. And it's like, yeah, someone might be dead. Like, yeah. Who cares that this inconvenienced you? Like,
I always think about the actor who has to take a role like that. Where how do you sell someone on that? Where you have to be like, all right, here's the thing. We're gonna put you in some skimpy clothes, and almost every episode, you're just gonna be the worst person on the beach. And like, do you sell it by saying like, oh, there's hidden depths, or do you just say like, that's the role? We think you'd be great for this. What do you think? Like what is the
point? It's funny because like I've never seen like a behind the scenes or anything because you hear the story of like, oh yeah, we had to get Jorge Garcia in there, like oh yeah, we wrote the character of Sawyer basically around his audition and and like you never hear them be like, oh yeah, when we met Maggie Grace, right. we knew that she, like, this character Shannon, this would be perfect for us. Like I've never seen that angle.
Yeah, no one wants to hear that. No one wants to be like, oh, this terrible human being that we wrote would be perfect for you.
I don't know how you warm up to that idea.
Yeah, Maggie Grace just has a very specific talent for being able to deliver her lines through her teeth. Like every single, that's like every other line is just.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we get to that.
I think there was one last thing that I had. Well, no, I guess it isn't like a major thing. It was a curiosity thing though, which is Ray Mullen's fake arm. I remember at the time, because again, when you introduced me to the show, you'd say like, oh, everything's a mystery. You got to pay attention to everything. I remember at the time being like, oh, are they explaining how he lost his arm? And I only mention it because there's a part of me that's like, do you think, like, I wonder if there was like a part of them that's like, well, we'll give the farmer one arm and maybe it'll be important later. Like, do you think that they had planned on like revisiting this guy or?
I mean, I can't rule that out. I think they did it to show that he did need the help because he's not just an older farmer. He is a one-armed farmer. And that's why he needs the help. It's an interesting thing to write into the script because you could have gotten away with that by just having him alone on the farm and not having any help. It's nice to see, representation for somebody who's disabled, but it is one of those things where because everything here is a puzzle, you do wonder, is there significance beyond the surface level? Because again, when she's like pulling him out of the car, the fact that the arm comes off, like the camera does fixate on that. Like it does show like the arm come off. And yeah, I wonder if there's any, but my gut tells me it's just to show like, yeah, he really did need the help. He's a one-armed farmer in Australia, which is full of deadly flora and fauna. Of course, he needs help, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
That makes a lot of sense. Last thing I'll mention is because I did enjoy this. And I'm sure someone in the prop department, which even though I did write down as a joke, I'm like, when Saeed's just got the stick, I'm like, oh, they lost the prop person to make the grass airplane. But
Where's that grass airplane?
well, because at the same time, like, of all the people, Saeed actually probably would. Like, I could take, for a grass airplane. But anyway, I love that not only does he carry a mugshot in his pocket, but someone had the foresight to write in the top right, page 2 of 2. And I appreciate that because I was like, why does he just have a photocopy picture of the mugshot? But it feels like it's implied that's like, oh, yes, the details are on page 1 of 2.
That's a
which we did
fantastic
not
catch. That's great. Yeah. That's
Well, because it almost made me feel like the show was super dated for a moment. Because I'm like, it's 2004. Why does he have a photocopy of just like a mugshot that he print out on it? It's like, oh no, he probably had both. Maybe lost one, or like, yeah. But yeah, I feel like page 1 of 2 must have had like, here's what she is arrested. Here's like her details, age, height, all of the crime.
yeah.
I like whoever was in charge of the props. I give them props because that was a nice little thing to throw in there.
It was a fantastic find. I like that a lot. So yeah, and do we have any final thoughts on this episode?
I'm trying to think if there's any characters missed.
I guess I would just say we don't need to include this, but I like that they're already using the oceanic airplane bottles as bottles for water. I feel like those bottles get used so much throughout the show. It's just something that to see that they've already got like the tops cut off and Hurley's going to fill them up. I don't know why that tickles me, but it does.
Yeah, no, and I even they've all like established parts of the plane that like they're staying in. I will say though too, like I always imagine just like that awful thing that you get when you're wet and you like sit in sand and then it's like your pants are covered in sand for like the next like 4 months. I know they've been through this trauma, so I'm sure a little sand in their pockets probably doesn't bother them. But like no one seems to really like. It reminds me, I guess, I remember distinctly watching the director's commentary for Spider-Man 3, and I think it's like 99%. Anytime you see sand from the Sandman, it's just ground up corn. Because if they had used real sand, they're like there would be no way Toby would be able to get that out of his suit.
That's a good point.
And like you can kind of tell with the texture. I remember there's a scene where when Spider-Man is on the roof and he slides off his Spider-Man, he shakes it out, and it very much like just the weight of it, you can tell like it's like, oh yeah, that's not sand. That's definitely something else.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just thought about that just because like I remember like watching like Michael like get closer to Walt and he's just like scooting over in his khakis in the sand. I'm like, man, it is. I just know like that texture is going to be on your butt for the rest of your time on the island.
Oh man, I never even thought about that. Yeah, you like it's great that you get to live in Hawaii while you're shooting the show, but yeah, all day. And like a TV shooting schedule is crazy. It's like 12 hours or something. You are just covered in sand. Ugh. Well, now I'm going to be thinking about that every episode. Thanks. I can't get that out of my... Ugh. Speaking of the wreckage, like they do start building their own community, which I think is really cool. It's sort of like with Deadwood, where it's like every season the town gets a little bit more built up and becomes like more civilization. And I know at some point, I know they like explicitly show this. I don't remember if it's in season 1 or if it's later that the beach is like shifting and the water actually like reclaims a bunch of the wreckage, and so that the wreckage eventually disappears, which I'm sure was just a production thing where they're sort of like we don't want to have to cart this wreckage out here all the time. I like how they've sort of like Jin and Sun and Walt and Michael, they've already pitched their tents pretty much, and that's their spot. Which I think is absolutely what would happen, like in a real crash scenario like that. Like people would definitely all like mark down like their territories. It would just happen. Like it happens anywhere. Like you're at a PTA meeting, you're at a meeting of your friends where it's like everybody like has their spot, and that's just a thing that like humans do. Like we just come out and say like this is where I like to put my butt normally. And if somebody's sitting here, I'm not gonna say anything about it, but I'm gonna be pissed off about it.
Yeah. They did a good job with as you mentioned, the socks, and that the ambiance with the wreckage and everything.
But yeah, I think we did it. I think we did Tabula Rasa.
I like it.